There you go. Can you hear that coffee?
Even if it is.
Aye, it's grand. Okay, that's alright. Do you get loads of people always like saying to you, can I call you for a chat?
I actually don't get that too much. Like, yeah, I think people are embarrassed to say it.
Well, I'm not. Yes, okay, right, okay.
You're gonna make me laugh.
So you're very...
I get word on a lot, yeah.
That's the chronic line, so we're done. That's just that's
Yeah.
taking them down, like. You know what I mean?
I was angry that time.
Right, okay, right, that's enough, right, okay. This always happens, right. So you're very welcome back to Move's second YouTube session. Oh my god, why can't I say it? Episode! Right.
Just say welcome to
Yes! Yes, that's what I'll say.
Yeah.
That's the coffee.
Yeah.
Noise. Okay, ready, okay.
People say scoring a goal or getting a compliment or something like that, or of doing something good. So imagine, for example.
So you're very welcome to Mind Your Head with Move. I'm joined here with the wonderful Niall McAlinden from Thrive. Niall, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here, yeah.
So Niall, tell me a wee bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a mental health coach for the Thrive programme. I work mostly on Zoom at the moment, but also in Dungannon. Some of my work is one-to-one stuff, some of it is Zoom stuff in groups, and also groups in Dungannon. But I've been a Thrive coach for the last 5 years. I've mostly worked in Korea and Dungannon in the Skin. But obviously with COVID-19, I've had to change a few things. But yeah, it's mostly online in Dungannon now, but yeah.
Brilliant. And did you always have an interest in health and well-being?
I struggled myself, probably, if I'm being honest, looking back, from I was about 10 years old. And obviously when you're 10 and you're struggling with your thoughts and feelings, you don't really understand what it is. And I think when you're that age, 10, in your early teenage years as well, there was no talk back then 20 years ago of mental health. So I think for me, I'd always struggled, but I thought it was just me. I thought it was just the way I was and that it was normal. And then it was only when I went to university that, I started to spiral out of control. And I started to, my mental health deteriorated. I obviously left home and I'm sure you know yourself, Annette, when you go to Belfast you're exposed to so many different things.
Absolutely.
And there was so many opportunities to drink, to gamble, you're just exposed into the real world and I hadn't the skills to cope with it. And and I thought about it when I was in my early 20s that maybe I was always even when I was younger, I always wondered why I was like the way I was, and I always questioned why somebody else thought differently than me and why they felt differently in the same situations, etc. And I was always a very deep thinker, and I sort of started to when in my early 20s I started to look at the different interventions and sort of started to look when I thought that I needed some help, that sort of led me down a path of where I am today.
Yeah. So now, what were your initial symptoms?
Low self-esteem. Yeah, I didn't. I think, look, I always had no problems with friends or with with relationships or anything growing up, and I did get some attention, etc. No, it's just I had no problems with that. I had no problems with and I think sometimes that masks it.
Very much so.
Yeah, I think but I spent my whole. I think looking back, I doubted myself all the time, and I felt inadequate a lot of the time. Perfectionism was a massive part to playing it. A lot of people don't really understand what perfectionism is, but I mean, for me, I strived. Perfectionism was driven from low self-esteem, and I strived constantly to prove myself all the time, which put me under a tremendous amount of pressure. And when I went to university, I couldn't deal with it. I felt the need that I had to prove myself, and I just couldn't cope. But low self-esteem, anxiety, Depressive symptoms sometimes. I think probably the depressive symptoms only really started to show when I started to drink a lot. As I'm sure you know, Annette, drinking was the symptom really of the fact that I wanted to escape from the way I was thinking and feeling. And
It's like a coping mechanism.
It was my way of coping, drinking and gambling, and I had absolutely no idea how else to cope with it. And that obviously, clearly, when you're drinking all the time, it exacerbated my symptoms and made them worse. And then I started to feel that I had some lonely days, put it that way, some dark days, but yeah.
And there'll be a lot of students at the minute can totally resonate.
100%, yeah.
At the minute, especially because they, we're just fresh out of freshers, and that's a big hey. Maybe you're just entering university, and it's your first time away from home, especially with the pandemic, and there's a lot of peer pressure, and as you say, perfectionism, and to lead this social life and the high life. But we know when the highs, there has to come sometimes a low. And what would your advice be to, say, university students at the minute that maybe are starting to feel a wee bit different within themselves because they've changed their environment, and they're maybe drinking more, or as you say, gambling, or maybe taking drugs?
Yeah, one of the things I found, right, was I'd say over the last 3 years, the bulk of my clients would be people probably from the ages of 16 till about 28.
Okay.
Right, and I've thought about it, and I've thought, the more I've spoken to my clients, the more I've thought about it, most of these people have been brought up in an environment, or they've been probably encouraged to, they've never been taught to actually understand how their mind works, or they've never been encouraged potentially maybe in their lives to go out and challenge themselves and build strong coping skills. So I think if you live a very sheltered life, like for example a lot of schools at the minute, what they do sometimes, if the child is struggling with anxiety, they'll give the child a free pass so they don't have to go to the class, and that's helpful. I understand that can be helpful in the moment, but things like that is actually not, it's sending the wrong message to the child, because the child then begins to understand that situations cause my problems and I can't cope with them, I haven't got the internal skills to manage them, therefore I need to run. So they spend their whole lives ducking and diving and running and avoiding situations that trigger off their anxiety in inverted commas, and what happens is then when you go to university, and I can relate so much to this, I spent a lot of time doing it myself, when you go to university and you don't have that shield anymore, you have to go into university, you're exposed to so many different things. A lot of the people have never built up the inner resources to actually be able to manage these things.
Yeah.
What happens is then they can't cope, so they reach for something external and start gambling instead, or they start drinking instead. This is, and I see it all the time. This is why if I'm working with somebody under the age of 25, probably under the age of 21 definitely, I always ask them, who are you closest with? Who have you spent most of your life talking with? And it is frightening the amount of times that mummy, daddy, brothers, sisters, whilst well-intentioned, have actually been colluding with the person and actually reinforcing, protecting them from actually learning coping skills.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. You have to think about coping skills or skills. If I'm speaking to anybody today who's skilled at public speaking or at golf or anything, or taking penalty kicks or free kicks, they've practiced loads. When it comes to your mental health, we're generally encouraged that situations are the cause of your problems, you need to run away from them, avoid them.
And that's the good news here, that these skills can be strengthened.
Yeah.
So in regards to resilience, what way can young people and adults, help build their skills of resilience in their daily life?
One of the things that I think is important to intellectually understand is that one of the things that we look at when we look at the research is that what is the major driving force behind a lot of mental health problems is what we call an external locus of control, or sense of power and control. Basically believing that the event or the situation or the dog or the weather or whatever is the cause of your symptom. Now the major issue with that is the moment you think that, you're done. It's end of story. If I believe that this room or these people or these cameras are making me feel anxious today, then my symptoms are almost certainly going to accelerate, because I can't do anything about it then.
It's that fear of judgment.
Yeah. So if I believe that dog scared me, I can't do anything. So I think it's about understanding that, okay, these situations, but getting your head around the fact that life is not a two-stage process where something happens here, I create something in here, and that makes me feel like that. If that was the same, if that was the case, we would all be the same. yeah, we all have the same emotions around the same things. Life is actually a 3-stage process, and it's the middle stage that people need to understand and learn about. And that's your mindset, your beliefs, your psychology, your self-esteem, your language, etc. This is why when I'm speaking to my clients, I predominantly focus on their thinking, because we can't control what happens externally. All we can do is control the way that you see the external world and the way you filter it through your mindset, through your mental health. And if you focus on this, then this will change how you react and how you feel in them situations. So in answer to your question, Annette, you have to, I think it's important that people intellectually understand that, right, this situation isn't making me feel anything directly. It's the way that I react to them, and I need to learn to tolerate and cope with that. Rather than ducking and diving. Again, if you have an external locus of control or sense of power and control, people then, they start to have a strong desire for control. What that means is they start to over-control their lives. They tend to compensate for the lack of perceived control. So they'll start to like do silly things like touching wood and crossing fingers, and they'll start, you know, reading horoscopes. They'll start trying to avoid and duck and dive, and they rely on external things when things are difficult. All of these things create the illusions of control. People think that they're actually helping them to gain a sense of control, when the reality is they're not in any way, shape or form, which is why people who do these things, their symptoms tend to exacerbate.
It's very hard to control your thoughts, but we can only try to control how we react to them. Do you believe that not all thoughts are facts?
Oh, 100%, you know, yeah.
Sometimes we can think something in our heads and think, oh, that's true, or that person thinks that, but we've no actual evidence to back up that thought.
Yep.
So that's why it's very important to challenge those, especially those negative thoughts that can get you down and make you feel as if you're not good enough. Is there any tips or techniques that you would share with your clients in order to challenge their thoughts, Niall?
Well, your thoughts are not random. That's the thing I would say, is that, you know, the thoughts that we have come from the beliefs that we hold about life, right? So 80% of what I do, I understand, and I think a lot of mental health treatments and therapies focus on your thinking, which is clearly, which is clearly helpful. But as I say, I always say to my clients, like, if you have a thought today that, let's say I'm going for a walk today, and I start having thoughts like, oh my God, what happens if you see a dog? That thought's not random. That's come from a belief I have about dogs.
I love dogs.
Yeah, and also I love dogs. I absolutely love dogs.
Fan, but you would, a lot of clients would not.
It's just an example.
Be a fear of.
Yeah, it's just an example. It's an example, and you know, it could be anything. It could be if I was driving up today and I was having loads of thoughts like, oh my God, this is going to be awful. It's going to be scary. They're not random. Right. So what we look at people's psychological foundations, their main core beliefs about how much control they have, their coping skills over a situation, their level of self-esteem. Like the thoughts we create around any situation is predominantly or largely dictated by how much control we think we have over that situation. Like, let's say I said to Fiona today, Fiona, I want you to go on a flight tomorrow from, you know, Dublin to London, right? When that's been filtered through Fiona's thinking, basically the beliefs that she holds about how much control she has over that. She thinks, yeah, I can manage that, I can cope with that. I believe I have the skills inside of me to tolerate and manage that and get from A to B. From now until tomorrow, she's not going to be worried about it. She's not going to be panicking about it. She's not going to be overthinking it, because she feels powerful. She believes she's got the internal skill set to manage and cope with that. If you've got an external locus of control, lots of unhelpful beliefs, you think, oh my God, flying's scary, it's horrible, I'm going to feel out of control, I'm not going to cope with that. From now to tomorrow to the flight, she's going to be worrying about it. She's going to be catastrophizing, thinking about the worst case scenario. The thought she creates is going to be unhelpful. So what I predominantly focus on when I'm working with my clients, especially in the first probably month of the program, I'd focus a lot on their core central beliefs about their sense of power and control, their coping skills. And if you build those, the rest will follow suit. But in answer, I know I'm talking a lot here, but in answer to your question,
you're so knowledgeable.
Yeah, in answer to your actual question about the thoughts, you're absolutely correct. A belief is essentially just a thought you keep thinking. You know, I work with a lot of, it tends to be a feminine phobia of being sick. It's much more common than you realise. I think research shows that approximately between 2 and 5% of females have emetophobia, which is the pathological fear of vomiting, or choking or gagging. There's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. But they believe, to a greater or lesser extent, some of them would rather die than be sick, right? Some of them think it's the most horriblest, most awfulest thing in the world. And clearly, being sick's not pleasant, as I'm sure you know that. But it's not the worst thing in the world. But again, if you tell yourself a story, all the belief is, it's just a story.
Yeah,
if you tell yourself a story,
in your mind.
you tell yourself a story over and over again every day. I mean, research shows, depending upon what research you look at, we have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts every day. You know, I was looking at a research paper, or looked at a article a couple of years ago, and we've between, I think it's 64,800 thoughts or whatever every day. And each one of these are wee stories, and if you're constantly telling yourself stories like, being sick's horrible, I can't cope, I'm not good enough, this is blah blah blah, regardless of whether or not it reflects reality or not, you're going to believe it. Yeah, if you tell yourself a story over and over and over again, you will eventually believe it.
You're actually going to feel it as well.
Yeah.
And it'll, not just your mental health, but your physical health will be impacted as well.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people may not think that they are, inverted commas, bad enough or too far gone to get help. Sometimes they think that therapy or coaching is only for people that really need it. What would you say to those people that maybe are considering, they feel maybe out of sorts at the minute, but they're not sure whether to go to therapy or go to coaching, maybe to better themselves or to help them at the minute?
I know we spoke about this before, but yeah, I think when I started working as a Thrive coach, the vast majority of the clients I would have seen, and that would have been people who struggled psychologically and emotionally with symptoms like depression, anxiety, blah blah blah, whatever. Now it's about 70%, maybe even 60%, and I see this as a good thing. Not that I don't want to help people who are struggling, because clearly I do, yeah. But mental health is for everybody. Everybody in this room has mental health. We all have mental, just like we all have physical health. Every single day we're putting food into our bodies and we're thinking about calories and we're thinking about this. That's the attitude that people must have towards their mental health. There's nowhere near enough encouragement of everybody to go and seek help for their mental health. Yes, you mightn't be depressed. Yes, you mightn't be anxious about everything. But I mean, you could improve. You could. I can guarantee if we sat down today, that you'd have someone have the beliefs, thinking styles, behaviours, and habits, and you could improve. And I'm not encouraging perfectionism to be perfect, but we as human beings, we tend to have a reactive approach to mental health.
Yeah.
What that means is there's zero training taught in schools, basically, essentially, and we were brought into life.
I think it is improving.
It's improving, yeah.
Definitely.
It is improving, yeah. It is in that, yeah. And obviously that's necessary. But a lot of times, people are just making it up as they go along. There's no specific proper training. Yeah. What happens is then, a bad event or something will happen in life. We have not got the skills to deal with it. We have never been taught to understand how to manage this. We then get depressed and anxious, and then obviously we react then and go and seek help. But I mean, people generally, the vast majority of people don't wait until their teeth are black and then go, oh God, I must go to the dentist. There's generally a proactive approach into looking after things in life. You don't wait until your car's completely gone and then you go to the mechanic.
Or when you run out of diesel, which I often do.
Yeah.
Say nothing.
Okay, well, generally.
When the red light's on, I get.
You just drive on anyway.
I just drive on.
Yeah, but generally speaking, the vast majority of people don't wait until they're out and then they go and, you know what I mean? There tends to be a proactive approach when it comes to mental health. Not really.
Because of the stigma.
Yeah.
Because of the shame that essentially, really, it's shocking that we're in 2021 and there still is stigma towards getting help for your mental health. I remember when I first attended CBT, cognitive behaviour therapy, was in 2015, and I was like, don't be telling anyone, and only told like my family, and don't you dare tell anyone. Now I loudly and proudly say it, because it was massive in my recovery of anxiety, and I went back recently to CBT post-pandemic, and I will always be an advocate for the likes of therapy and for coaching, because you don't need to be too far gone to get help, and prevention is sometimes better than cure. But you're never, as I always say in quoted commas, bad enough to get help. There's no such thing. The spectrum of mental health is so broad, and if you feel that you need support or you want a wee bit of self-development work, there are people out there for you. I spoke about this before, that there's not one size fits all when it comes to a therapist or a coach. Some people say, counselling didn't work for me or therapy didn't work for me. Maybe it was the practitioner. Would you agree that sometimes you have to try it out before maybe you find your fit?
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, I suppose what I do is not therapy and counselling. That's the difference. It's not like what I do is mental health coaching. You can't not benefit from the knowledge, in the sense that the knowledge is not generally taught anywhere else. So I do agree that it is important that you get on with the protector, with the counsellor, the therapist, or the coach, whatever it is. You have to have that relationship. One of the reasons why I used to see everybody one-to-one, I used to see everybody face-to-face, one-to-one, and I became quite disillusioned with it for multiple different reasons, and I delved into coaching, and coaching as in a group setting, and it is miles better for me. I think it's sort of for many different aspects in that, it's sort of, I think a lot of times when people go to therapy, which you just mentioned there, it's nearly like they're ducking and diving and hopefully no one sees me. Oh my God, I'm going to talk about my problems, and I'm going to talk, and it nearly feels like, that you're not doing something that you shouldn't do, because clearly that's not true, but I mean doing something that like you're going to be judged by. Where see if I'm sitting with 8 people in a group and they're all sitting there for the first session, all of that's done. Where I said, and we're all here for the same reasons. We all want to improve, we all want to, and it creates a real togetherness in the room. And it doesn't matter about, the symptom for me is, again, is probably the differences in what I do and what therapy and counselling, is that therapy is generally focused on your symptoms specific.
Yeah.
It's more about, right, if you're consulting me for anxiety, let's talk about anxiety and let's talk about that. Whereas I could be working with people in a group and there could be a whole host of different symptoms. The symptom for me is not what I focus on. I focus on, again, I would call the symptom is secondary. The symptom is a consequence of the fact your thinking's not right.
Yeah.
The fact your coping skills aren't strong enough, you've unhealthy beliefs, your mindset's unhelpful, etc. So let's focus on this. Like I got a phone call about 2 months ago, maybe less, but 6 weeks ago, from a lady whose son I'd taken through the 5 program about 3 years ago. And she said to me, now my son consulted you for panic attacks, and it's I'm so surprised. He's changed his life, but so many aspects of his life has changed. He's not drinking anymore. When people come over to visit, he's the first man down, and blah blah blah. And she seemed really surprised at this, and I said, but yeah, when your son consulted me for panic attacks, we didn't spend 2 months talking about panic attacks. Yeah, I taught him to thrive. I taught him how to build stronger psychological foundations, how to learn to manage his thinking and emotions better, how to learn to change his way of thinking. And by doing that, he will overcome his panic attacks, but also many other areas of his life will improve.
I even love that name, Thrive.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're not put on this earth just to merely survive.
Yeah.
We're here to thrive, and we're here to, be content and be happy in whatever way you deem fit. But sometimes we chase happiness by comparing ourselves to other people.
Social media is definitely encourage that.
Very much so.
Yeah,
I would like to touch on that. Social media is great for connecting people, but it can also be a massive way that we can disconnect from ourselves. Would you find that in your clients or even in your own personal experience?
Yeah, what I often say to my groups now is I seen a stat a couple of weeks ago that the average person spends 4 hours and 20 minutes a day on their mobile phone.
My screen time is...
And I read that, and I think it's whatever percentage of that is social media. And I'll be honest, I felt sick after. I was thinking when I was 20 years ago when I was growing up, I came home to school, put on my United jersey, and went out and thought I was, Eric Cantona or something, and was kicking about for hours and hours and hours in the garden. I went home. I loved football, loved going out, loved being outside, loved it. Now when kids come home, it's like, let's go on TikTok. Let's spend 2 hours on TikTok, or let's go on social media. Instagram for me personally, I'm not here obviously to run down other platforms, because look, social media is man-made. I can't blame social media, but it does encourage people, young people now, to imagine you're going to social media. Let's say you're on Instagram for 20 minutes. You must see about how many images? 200, 300 images. And what happens is that over time you start comparing yourself to somebody else. You start thinking you start getting an unrealistic appraisal of what somebody's life is like. And I often say to my clients, you do realise that, see that couple that smiled for a photo there, they could have been arguing with each other 10 minutes before that.
Hashtag couple goals.
But you know what I mean? It's I sometimes look at social media, I take it with a pinch of salt. It's nonsense really. It's just the vast majority of people don't post up crying and saying I had a shit day today. I know some do, but the vast majority of people don't. So I go on Instagram for 5 minutes and I have to turn it off. I don't think it's helpful whatsoever. And as I was saying to you earlier on in that I remember looking at an article one day and it was saying that for some people, every like that you get releases the same dopamine or the same chemicals in your brain that makes you feel good as, say, scoring a goal or getting a compliment or something like that, or of doing something good. So imagine, for example, right, that my self-esteem's very low, right, and I feel depressed or anxious or feel down. it encourages people to think, well, again, as I mentioned earlier on, what external thing can I do that's going to make me feel good? Well, do you know what? I'm going to post on social media here. I'm going to get 600 likes and people's going to comment saying, you're lovely, you're brilliant, you're great, and it's going to make me feel good.
Maybe get a wee fire emoji.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like hot stuff.
Looking
Like,
great chick.
and it's like that's what young people these days are relating their sense, their overall sense of self-worth on.
And it's interesting because I would find that a lot of people would comment under people's posts but would never actually say that verbally to the person.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I said to my group last night, actually, I said, you know, see if you get, let's say you get 600 likes, right? How many of them people really like your post? Like, they're probably judging you saying, oh, she's better than me, or she's good, but they probably don't like you anyway. Do you know what I mean? So,
I do think the most important like you can give is to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a lot of we look externally for gratification, and I think it's important to try and shine the torch on yourself. What do you like about yourself, and that you're not, you know, doing things say for the gram or social media. But it seems like you know, young people now are growing up with, you know, with social media at their fingertips, and there's so many apps now, and it's like it's very, like, technology is taken over, and we know it has its pros, but it definitely has its cons in regards to mental health, especially when they're on a scroll hole. And you know, I call it a scroll hole, but I can't be a hypocrite, because I would find that myself. So I think that we have to model maybe to the younger generation, maybe about screen time and about, you know, like what we did as young children. Like I went and find tree huts instead of scrolling, or you know, things like that, or in a mud kitchen out the back, you know, getting dirt in the nails. But you see, the thing is, it's a different era, and I suppose we have to embrace that. And it's not, we can't blame the youth either. You know, it's something that we're all in together. My parents have actually recently got smartphones, and they used to like be saying to me about, oh, you're never off that. Now I'm like, oh, role reversal, you're never off it. So it's across the board, and once again we can feel connected to each other through it, but then you can feel disconnected within ourselves, and that's from my maybe personal experience. Niall, where can people find you?
Online.
Yes, don't be giving your address now.
Thrive with Niall, Instagram, Facebook. Message me.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for
Thanks
the
for having
lovely
me.
chat and being so open.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sponsored by Move.
Sponsored by Move, yeah. Thank you. And then Instagram's just at Matthew.
So welcome back to Mind Your Head with Move. I am absolutely delighted to be joined with the lovely Matt MacNabb. Matt, how are you?
Good. Long journey up here.
Welcome
2 hours.
to Tyrone.
It's nice. It's a nice spot up here, so it
Yes,
is.
there's different, isn't it?
It is. There's something about this place.
There's just something about it. Have you ever been to Tyrone before?
I think once in my life.
Very good. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, yeah. Life's been busy, so it has. So
Yes.
on this podcast, been doing different things, a lot of traveling and stuff. So
Yes.
it's exciting, a whirlwind after Love Island, like. But
Yes. So tell me a wee bit about yourself, Matt.
yeah. So what do you want to know?
Well, whatever. What's your interest?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
So I'm from Downpatrick in Down. I love traveling, I'm into fitness. I love basically living my life as an adventure and stuff. I went to school, went to university, did law as my undergraduate, postgraduate, did a master's in MBA or whatever, and yeah, went into a job I hated, did that there, and from there I sort of changed my life, changed my perspective, and life's been good so far.
Good man. So you would have felt a wee bit stuck at a stage in your life, and you thought, you know what, I can change this up here. There's more to life than feeling stuck or being in a job that you don't like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there a light bulb moment?
I suppose just having the terrible experience, like where it's like I went into this place and I like being free. I've learned that's one of my main values. So being in there, being told what to do, getting in and the place is just miserable, it's just grey and people weren't happy and enjoying themselves, and I'm like, flip me, I'm gonna die someday. Like, this is like, am I gonna live my life like this? If I've only got one life, I'm gonna actually experience it in the way I want to. at least if I'm broke or something, but I'm doing something that I love, like I love that. You know what I mean? There's what's better than that?
Yeah.
Like?
And were you always like a risk taker?
I don't know. Can't really. Probably not. Like, probably play pretty safe. Just did the usual. Play football, hurling when I was younger. You know, went to school, did the odd bad thing. Like, but I was normally pretty good. Like, and then I think I got in a relationship like 2nd or 3rd year of uni, and life was just very normal. I was like, flip, this is just set up for me to, you know, get a job, you know, get engaged, follow the normal route. And I was like, oh my god, this kind of had a wee moment where I was sort of freaked out a little bit. And then I think it was exacerbated by being in that job, where I was like, this is not what I want. Like, even if I'm earning big money and stuff, like, I'm like, god, what is the point? Like, I could be out doing something, living like an epic life, like, but
so you knew there was more to life than the life you were living.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, there's so much to do in life. Like, I always say anything's impossible or possible, because like we've got this narrow perception of life. We've got our 2 eyes, our brains telling us what to see, and like we only see what's in front of us. And combined, we only see what's the world here, but there's infinite worlds, infinite universes. Like, there's so little we know that anything's possible. And I think, flipping, why not just go and do something you want to do, enjoy it, and try and explore as much as possible, even if the shit turns out bad. Like, you know what I mean? You've still tried it, and it's still going to be an adventure. There's ups and there's downs in an adventure, like, but it's more exciting than just being like blasé and earning money and going home and just watching football, whatever, like.
And do you think that, you know, in society people like to put people in boxes, you know, with their careers, and like they like to label people?
Well, that's a good point. Like being just, I think you can nearly box yourself in. Like, I think because we're very familiar, people like people who are put in a certain box because our brain can understand them. You know what I mean? So I think automatically we do that with people. Like, if I think, you know, one person, I go like, alright, teacher, has a family, has their stuff together, you know, loves caring for other people, because it's sort of, you're connecting that in a box and stuff. Whereas that teacher could be just like an epic adventure, just does her job, and then goes flipping skydiving or something at the weekend, like, you know what I mean?
But I find that when I was, I'm a former teacher, and when I decided to take the leap, that was something that I was a wee bit afraid of, because that was my identity. I was a teacher, I was Miss Kelly, and I had to move from that. It did frighten me a wee bit, but it was more the perception of what other people thought, you know, that I feel. But no, I didn't look at it as feeling, I looked at it as learning. And every, you know, path you are in life is a stepping stone to where you're meant to be. When you came out of Love Island, were you afraid of having that label, you know, Matt from Love Island? Because I won't call you Matt from Love Island, you're Matt MacNabb. But obviously, you know, being thrust into the public eye, you'll be known as Matt from Love Island, and I'm sure you want to still have your identity as your Matt.
Yeah, I mean, people do call me Matt from Love Island. It's like, oh, you hear people on the street, oh, is that guy from Love Island? And then
Can I have a selfie?
Yeah, very much. But
Can
like,
I have a selfie?
if you want.
Okay, man.
But I mean, I don't care too much what people think. I still gotta go and do what I want to do at the end of the day. Like, I'm still gonna, and then whatever I do, I know, because I'll push things to limit a little bit, where I'll do stuff that people are maybe too afraid to do because of judgment of others, or stuff like that.
Going on Love Island I think is very brave. Because I could never.
Well, that's what we're talking about. I mean, like, we're like, literally, you'll be having conversation, and you're like, oh, you suddenly remember that like millions of people are watching you, and you're like, oh.
That's it. But even for me, it'd be the scrutiny and the fear of what people would say, press, public, social media, and you seem to have dealt with that very well. In regards to your mindset towards it, you're very.
The way I think about it is everybody's got their perception. I always use this example, like, she could think I'm the best looking person in the world. she could think I'm the ugliest guy she's ever seen, but neither are right. You know what I mean? It's just their perception. And if you know exactly who you are,
Yes.
and exactly what your purpose in life is, and your why is in, like my why is, I want to have an epic life and I want to help and be a positive light as much as I possibly can, then whatever happens is just, Niall was touching on earlier, is external circumstances. You know what I mean? If you have your internal, you know exactly what you want to do and you do it, then at least you've tried.
And we can let the opinions of others affect us. Has it ever affected you, or have you always had that resilience and tolerance towards other people's opinions?
No, I think I was always cared about what people think, or thought rather. I think more or less maturity, I would say, and being pissed off with my circumstances at the time led to me thinking like, and then a sort of realization of perception is reality, is that like that's where I sort of adopted this attitude a little bit more, and I think it's a learning curve as well, but at the end of the day, just push yourself, challenge yourself, and see what happens, you know?
Yeah, no, that's definitely a deadly approach, and it comes with experience. To anyone who's looking at you at the minute and thinking, no, he's living the dream, he's living the good life. You've created this good life. It hasn't just happened.
Yeah.
You just didn't go on a massive TV show and find this contentment and happiness. You actually have created that beyond the
100%.
summer. What would your advice to be someone who maybe is unhappy in their current circumstances, whether it's in their relationships, whether it's in where they live or in their job? What advice would you give to them as someone who's been in that place that was not happy?
I think you have to identify why you're unhappy, and I think it comes down to your values. Obviously if you're unhappy, it's the certain thing that's making you unhappy isn't in line with your values and what you want for your life. So you need to change it and just do it, have the balls to do it, because at the end of the day, we're all going to die at some point, like, you know what I mean? That's the worst that's going to happen to you, so...
That's the only thing we know, like.
Yeah, exactly, that's the one thing we know. So are you going to be living your life like 30, 40 years down the line, you're like, flip, I'm still unhappy, and like that's your whole life, that's you done, like.
What is your vision of happiness, like a typical day for you? What would be an epic day for you if you were to say, right?
Going to the gym in the sun with my friends, playing volleyball or some sort of sport, going to the beach, maybe skydiving or like doing something epic, then partying and stuff like that.
That's a busy
Sounds
day.
like a cool day.
I'm coming.
Yeah, we'll do
Where are we
it.
going?
California.
No, but California. Have you been? So travel. You'd love to travel more.
I lived there for 2 years, like, so.
Amazing.
Yeah, I loved it out there, and the people are all about that mindset, I think.
Yes.
You know, they're a lot more open and stuff to that. They're a lot more open-minded, I think, so you can discuss different ideas and stuff. And whereas in the UK and Ireland, I do feel that you maybe get criticized for having a different mindset, whereas maybe Americans and maybe not so Americans, but Californians encourage it a little bit more.
Do you think things are changing here?
100%. Yeah, I've noticed a good difference since I left and then came back. I noticed a good difference because I think circumstances have forced us to look at things different. You know, being in lockdown for 2 years and all, you can only look yourself in the mirror at that point and you're like, am I happy here? And why are you unhappy? And that person over there doing something different, that's actually cool now, because like I'm unhappy and he's happy now, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And like we're here today to normalise the conversation around mental health, and we spoke previous that you haven't actually suffered yourself, but you don't have to suffer to know about it or talk about it, because you could have suffered.
Exactly, and I think coming out from, again, what Niall was saying, your mental health is, you have to be proactive about it. It's like your physical health as well. So I think I'm all about positivity and making a life epic and doing what you want. So I think that can only be good for your mental health. Like.
Oh, definitely. And it's about you making the changes in your life that need. And sometimes it's very hard to do that. And you maybe don't have the motivation or the drive, but also that fear to hold you back. You seem pretty fearless to me. That's just my opinion.
No, I'm actually not. I'm actually a giant pussy. No, I would say I just forget about it and jump. Like the big thing I use is the other side of fear is freedom, and what I do is literally just jump and then see where I land, see how it goes. Just forget about fear. It's the same where like if you're jumping off a cliff, right? Into some water or something, not jumping off a cliff on the land, don't do that. But if you're jumping in the water, you'd be like, where do you jump that's deep enough? You're like, alright, that's where you jump. Literally what I do is I don't second guess, I run and jump. And that's it.
You have faith that you'll land
just have faith, because at the end of the day you're taking that commitment to leap.
Yeah.
You can only trust in your circumstances that's the part to jump, that's the deep part, and just let go. That's why I actually love skydiving and things like that there, because I think it's just a leap of faith, just letting go, forgetting about everyday concerns, forgetting about anxiety, forgetting about every thought, just have faith and just let go.
I can remember skydiving in New Zealand.
Oh, sick!
And
That'd be unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like it was the adrenaline rush was
that'd
stand
be
clear.
so cool.
But I think when I was younger, I didn't think much about it. I just did it.
That's
and
the big
even
thing.
in the Great Barrier Reef, I did it twice, and once in New Zealand, once in Australia. But at that time of my life, I was only 21 and I was fearless. But I think now, as I've got older, I would be more cautious. And that sometimes happens when you get older. We begin to get a wee bit more careful, maybe take life more seriously, and things like that. And it comes a wee bit with maturity. But sometimes I like to remind myself of maybe my carefreeness, if that's a word, when I was younger. What would you say to someone that maybe used to be maybe like loving life, but just thinks that life is so serious now that we've got older and we're like, in our late 20s, 30s, and thinks they have to have their life together? Because this can impact our mental health.
I think we've got to stop taking ourselves so seriously, like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
We're just like, we're set up, the government and everything, and education, all that stuff's made everything so serious, but really we're just a bunch of like animals really on a floating rock. Yeah, on a floating rock in the middle of who knows where. You know what I mean? You gotta look at it from a funny perspective, like. Whereas I think just society's created this thing that's made everything so seriously, like so serious. So
you just want to rip the roof off and just
look,
freedom.
Dive deep and see what happens.
Good man. So Matt, where can people find you if they want to connect with you? And you have lots of exciting things happening. You have your podcast. Yeah, so podcast is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I will get on YouTube as well, but it's Chat with Matt. Chat with Matt. Sponsored by Move. Sponsored by Move. Yeah. Thank you. And then Instagram's just at Matthew what do you call that thing? Underscore MacNabb. And then TikTok's Matthew MacNabb, Twitter's Matthew MacNabb, all that stuff. Just Matthew MacNabb. That's brilliant. Well, Matt, thanks so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you. So we have some great questions sent in from Instagram.
What are the fundamental patterns in your daily lives to promote your mental health?
Exercise. I get up every morning and journal. I do my daily positives at the end of every day. Generally just challenge my thoughts as well. If I have any unhelpful thoughts, any behaviours that I believe is unhelpful for me, just address them, resolve them, work against them. But exercise is good for me as well, keeps the head straight and just look after your physical and your mental well-being, obviously. For me, I would have to say it's talking to someone that you trust, someone that cares about you. And I'm very grateful for like some of my friends and family that I've vented to many's a time, and I always walk away from them conversations feeling that wee bit better, and that has definitely helped my mental health on a daily basis. For me, it's exercise, number one, and then gratitude, number two. Gratitude is really important to me. If I wake up and I say I'm grateful for the air I breathe, the sun on my skin, my family, all that stuff, your day can only get better.
What role can we all play in tackling the stigma of mental health?
I think obviously talking about your mental health is important, and I think among people generally, I think lads, I'm sure you know Matthew, that sometimes lads are sort of distance themselves from that, and I think just talking about it and opening up if you're not feeling great, just to talk about it to your friends and to your family. I think it's only going to be a good thing if we do talk about mental health. I do sometimes think though that it's how we talk about it as well. Some of the messages I believe in social media, whilst well intentioned, are actually not helpful. But yeah, I think talking about it and not being afraid, obviously, to open up if you're having a poor day, you're not feeling good, or if you have a problem, just go and get it resolved. I mean, if you broke your leg, you'd go to the hospital, so why should your mental health be any different?
For sure, I'd like to echo Niall's sentiments there. Not being afraid to be vulnerable, not being afraid to let people know maybe of your experience. I know that's definitely helped me in the past, and the more open and honest I have been with people, the more they open and honest they have been with me, and it just generates a discussion around mental health, and it makes you feel less alone. When you're struggling and going through a really difficult time, you think that you're the only person in the world in this dark place, but there are other people that have walked that journey, not your journey but their own journey. And whether it's your mother, your sister, your brother or your friend, there's very few people unaffected by mental health problems in this current age. And I just think that not being afraid to open up and be honest about how you feel, and know that all feelings are valid. So I think that's very important to help break stigma so that we can normalise the conversation around mental health.
To me, I think mental health should be treated the same way as physical health, and I think if we treat it like fitness, like you want to improve, then I think that's the best way we can get over the stigma of mental health.
So now we're gonna have a game show. Please don't put that in. This or that with Niall and Matt.
You definitely rehearsed that.
Definitely did.
It sounds like a TV show or something.
This or that with Niall and Matt. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna play a wee game of this and that with Niall and Matt.
Should have sung that.
Did that right? I should have sung it. Blooper. Anyway, okay, so I'll let Matt answer first and then Niall.
Yep. No problem.
And don't be afraid to disagree. We're not all friends here. We joke when we're all friends here. Okay, so mountains or beaches?
Oh, fuck, this is a tough one for me because I love the mountains, but I love the beach. I'd have to say mountains because when you're up at the top, it's pretty sick. Like.
Do you have a favourite mountain in the mornings?
Yeah, Sleep Donners.
I love Sleep Indian.
Sleep Indians, class like.
See you there.
Yeah.
Okay, what about yourself?
Beaches.
Beaches.
I love going abroad and landing on the beach.
Good man.
Yeah.
I love Benone.
30 degrees, hard to beat.
Yes, do you know what? What about in Ireland? Where would you like to go?
I like Streetsha Beach.
Yes.
It's in Grange, in Sligo.
Lovely.
It's lovely and a lovely walk as well. I find the beach is really peaceful. Yes. And it's like it nearly feels like you're disconnected from normal life, and you can just walk and the sound of the water and everything else.
Class.
Yeah, it's really relaxing.
Very good. Now this is a very important question. This is a deal breaker now. Milk first or last in your tea?
Last.
Has to be last.
Thank God,
Yeah,
last.
that's not even a question, is it?
Anyone who's watching this is first. Just-
Really?
No, I'm last.
Oh, right.
Has to be last. Anyone who's watching this, just leave.
So the milk can't hit the tea bag, you know what I mean? It can't.
No, you don't.
that'd be weird.
You take the tea bag out and then put the milk in.
Yeah. What if you mix the tea bag with milk? It'd be odd.
It just doesn't, it doesn't sit right with me.
But sometimes when you want it that wee bit stronger, no?
No.
Do you brew your tea? We're going very deep into the tea.
I'm not a massive tea drinker, to be honest.
We can't be friends.
Yeah.
Should
I just leave now?
No, I'm joking. Do you prepare coffee?
Yes, or lemon, or like ginger tea, lemon and ginger tea. Just if I could talk, it'd be handy.
Good man.
No, tea's big for me. I would have at least 2 or 3 a day and at least one coffee. But I would let it sit in for about 10 minutes so it gets strength, a bit of strength in it.
Oh, good man. Oh, we're professional.
10 minutes?
10 minutes, huh?
Good God.
Professional
At that
teaching.
stage.
No, just a wee tiny bit of milk and then let it sit.
Right.
So it's just right.
We're going deep here. Okay, pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
It'd be awkward and say it depends.
Depends.
Love a pizza on a Friday night, but I would eat more pasta because it's healthier.
Oh, good man. Okay. Would you like legs as long as your fingers, or fingers as long as your legs?
I can't even
I can't
understand
even
that.
Okay, okay.
What does that even mean?
Right? You're given the choice here. Your fingers are as long as your legs, or legs as long as your fingers.
Definitely fingers as long as my legs. That'd be cool. Just,
But then what about your mountain hikes? That'd be a hand.
I'd just be reaching up to the top peak, pulling myself up there.
Fair
Doing
enough.
pull-ups in it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I agree. Though I find it really hard to visualize how that would work.
It's probably not going to happen.
No. It's one of those things. Yeah, I'd agree with Matt, but
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, you bet you've never been asked that before.
definitely not. I'm never eat.
80s or 90s?
90s because I was born then.
Oh, I am an 80s
Yeah,
baby.
I agree. Love 90s music as well.
Right, very good. Young things. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
100% dogs.
Me too. Love dogs. Okay. Love Island or Strictly Come Dancing? Dun, 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 dun.
No. It's because I have to say. No, Love Island, 100%.
Neither.
Neither.
Not for me.
Strictly.
I'd go for Strictly. I
It's in my
don't.
face.
No, look, Love Island wouldn't be for me. It's no, but I haven't watched Strictly either. But so I'd go with Strictly. No,
Okay. Rugby or Gaelic?
Gaelic.
Yeah, like
Gaelic, very good. Okay, and the last question. Okay, so visualising a first date. Okay, and would you take her for cocktails or coffee?
Cocktails probably.
probably a coffee.
I'd go for anything.
Right, I'll elaborate on this one because I think when you go for coffee, it spikes your like caffeine and you get more energetic and stuff, but also makes you like jittery and stuff. Like that's my hand after a coffee and stuff, so it makes you more nervous.
I have it too as well.
Whereas like cocktail, you just listen up and you can just chat shit.
We
to
Yeah,
each
like
other.
relaxes you a bit.
we had gorgeous coffee here at Nature and Co.
Lovely.
And
Yeah.
Oma, big shout out to Nature and Co. Great spot. Meet me at the club. Boys, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was
Having us.
class,
Thank you.
and thanks for tuning in if you're watching on YouTube, and please like and subscribe.
So,